Hey everyone, Andrew here, and it's time for my honorable and dishonorable mentions of 2025. It was an interesting year overall. We had a lot of really creative, really interesting films. Even the bad ones have something about them that is like stands out sometimes. There were a bunch of these films that could have easily made my bottom five or my top five. But let's get started. You know me, I like to start out with the worst, so let's talk about the dishonorable mentions of 2025. I probably should start with the childhood horror films that I kept mentioning in my other reviews. However, I figured I'd start with the one that's probably going to be the most controversial to end up on my dishonorable mentions list, and that is Weapons, a horror film that everyone loved, everyone is praising, everyone's been giving wide amounts of praise to, and I found it annoying and boring as spit. This film did nothing for me whatsoever. I wasn't even planning to watch it. I had no interest in it. The previews did not tempt me in any way, shape, or form. I only watched it because everyone kept saying like how good it is. Like, you gotta see it. It's this masterpiece. It's this great horror film. And I watched it and I'm like, I hate all of these characters. To be fair, I did have the ending spoiled for me. I knew all about who caused the kids to run away, what their motivation was, and what the big ending was going to be. And the ending of the film is about the only thing that I thought was interesting, was that part. It was just the incredibly slow, annoying slog to get to that point. The stupidity of the cops in the film is just ridiculously high. Like, the fact that none of them even really checked out what was going on with the one kid from this class that didn't disappear. You're like, oh, we should probably look into this kid because the fact that he did not get taken, something is up with that. And they didn't bother to go to his house and check. Granted, it might have been planned for that and they may have been able to hide that a little better, but it's still like, no, I have a hard time believing that the cops were that stupid. And then, they didn't even bother to collect all footage from all of the ring cams and all that stuff to figure out where these kids were running off to when they all ran in straight lines to the place that they were at. It's so convoluted and annoying, and I thought the villain was pretty decent, and the ending I thought was kind of interesting, if a little ridiculous and over the top, but it was at least interesting. It was definitely not worse than Minecraft, let alone the other ones. It was just like, this is one where I'm like, I'm pretty sure in like a couple years I'll come back to it and watch it again. I'll be like, oh, this is actually much better than I remember it. Why did I dislike this the first time? I'm fairly certain my opinion on it will change at some point in time. But for now, it's just like, ugh, this was not for me. We also had Zombies 4, Dawn of the Vampire. My God, I can't believe they've made 4 of these films. Like, the first one on Disney Channel was a terrible film right off the bat. Like, the only redeeming quality in that film was the dancing was somewhat decent. And that's been the case for all 4 films. This one, not even the dancing could save this film from being a complete dumpster fire for me. You've introduced this new monster race of people, the vampires, and you made them the worst vampires ever done in anything ever. Legitimately making the Twilight vampires look threatening. They don't drink blood. They eat a fruit called a blood fruit. There are also like 2 separate groups of vampires. You have the Daywalkers, who are just normal people from seemingly, but they can produce fire from their hands. And you have the vampires, who can't go into sunlight except when they can, and have the ability to make wind. And they are clearly the focus of this film. Like, this film is not, let's continue the adventures of the leads from the other ones. They are thankfully in the film, which is the only reason this film isn't completely awful. But there's definitely, you could tell that they're trying to do a spin-off so they can keep the series going, focusing on these new vampire characters who are so awful and terrible and not threatening and not interesting. And legitimately, there's a scene in this where they have a gang of the vampires all teamed up together to try to figure out how to get into the area where all the blood fruit is, because somehow the door is locked and they can't just force it open. So they are like, the main characters from the old film are training the new vampires, and the new vampires are like, what are you going to do about it? And the one werewolf goes, and all of them run for their lives. Like, this is supposed to be your big, threatening, new, dangerous possible thing, and they got scared by one werewolf in her normal form, not even in her werewolf form. Like, at least this film has most of the original cast back. They are the saving grace of this film because they are at least a little bit interesting. But they are so pushed off to the sidelines so we can focus on this Romeo and Juliet vampire people who are terrible, awful characters. I hate them. I hate them so much. And it's the worst kind of musical because it's a musical where there's a song every 5 minutes or less. You get like maybe 5 words of spoken dialogue before they break into a new song, and you're just like, all of the songs are the same. All of them are terrible and awful. The plot is just the same plot as literally all of the others. Like, I don't know how of all of the Disney Channel ones this one got made. But again, at least this one had the original cast returning even in a smaller role. It's much better than The Descendants Rise of Red that had literally none of the original leads in it, just Ursula's daughter in it. Like, if they make any more sequels, even if they bring back the original cast, I don't think I'm going to watch it. But if they drew what they were pitching, which is a spin-off with these vampire characters, hell no. I hated them. They were awful. There was a horror film called Xeno, which was basically E.T., but if the alien was a xenomorph. Pretty much exactly. Like, literally, she comes across this alien that looks like a xenomorph, looks like it came from the deepest, darkest part of hell, and she's like, I'm going to make friends with it. This film was definitely made from a female perspective because men are every man in the film is completely awful. We literally have a hellspawn xenomorph running around eating people, and he is less evil than the men in this film. Every man in this film is a monster. Even her friend befriends and becomes her boyfriend by the end is a monster who constantly belittles her, constantly turns on her, and abandons her anytime she's in trouble. But we're supposed to like him by the end. And you had these cops that were terrible. You had this cop that had a little toy car that he just kept flicking for whatever reason. And then at a point when the xenomorph attacks him, his car breaks, and you have this big sad moment of him staring at his broken toy car. And I'm like, good, you're an asshole. You deserve it worse than that. And he dies. So you're like, yay, good. It was it had some moments, but it's this is not one I would ever choose to watch again. If I want to watch a film like this, I would rather watch E.T. or Monster Trucks. At least Monster Trucks is fun. I would rather watch Axel, the one about the killer robot dog. There was a horror film called Plankenstein, which was about a killer surfboard. Stupid premise, but at least it has fun and is creative with its premise. It's the fact that it's so poorly shot and poorly put together that's kind of the problem. It's a film about a killer surfboard that has a bunch of people surfing, and it's all that really terrible, clearly they're just on the ground with a green screen behind them kind of surfing. It's the entire thing about the killer surfboard is so weird and so dumb because it was in police lockup for many, many years because a bunch of people died from it the last time it was out, and they're like, well, we gotta get rid of this. So they set it out beside the police dumpster. Is that what the cops do with dangerous possible things related to crimes? Is they just put it in a dumpster when they're done? Someone takes the board. People keep dying on the board, but people keep still grabbing the board and picking it up and going out and surfing, even though by this point, this board should have a reputation. It's pretty distinct in its design. It is an awful low-budget film that has a dance music number in the middle that's actually decent and kind of fun. That's one of the few saving graces of the film. It's an awful film, but I respect it and I enjoyed it. You can feel the passion and the heart and the energy behind it. This is low budget in its best way. Clearly a passion project. It's clearly made by people that this is not their professional job. And at least it's a slightly original idea as opposed to all the childhood turned horror films that are just cashing in on public domain IP. Speaking of, it's probably about time that I talk about some of those, so I saw a bunch of those this year. There's 2 that would not make my dishonorable mentions. One that would actually make my honorable mentions. The one that isn't going to end up on my dishonorable mentions or my honorable mentions is Popeye the Slayer Man. I actually like that one a bit. It was really kind of creative. I liked the look of Popeye in this. They actually made him look like Popeye, and they gave explanation for him being genetically stronger and this, that, and the other. And the story itself was kind of interesting and kind of creative, but the majority of the film is just people wandering around an empty factory, and that's just kind of like, meh. Like, the film itself is okay. It's at least competently put together, unlike a lot of the others, but I'm not going to put it in my honorable mentions because it wasn't actually good, but it was at least watchable. The one that does end up in my dishonorable mentions is Shiver Me Timbers, the third Popeye themed horror film. It's almost as bad as Popeye's Revenge. The entire story is like Halley's Comet messes with people and makes them evil, and there's this old man Popeye out on his little rowboat that people keep referring to him as a sailor, despite the fact that he's dressed more like a marine than he is like a sailor. But he gets hit by part of the comet, and he becomes this mutated killer with a completely CGI'd face that looks horrendous in every single frame that it's in. And that's the only part they changed about him. Otherwise, he's just a normal muscular man with this grotesque CGI face. The kills are terrible, the filming is terrible, the action is terrible. There's a point in the film where it's just the main characters on drugs dancing to nothing type of thing. It's dragged out, the acting's awful, the performances are awful, and it keeps referencing the Evil Dead franchise. Early in the film, two of the characters are about to have sex, and one of them goes, "Give me some sugar, baby." And like, that is a nice little homage to Evil Dead right there. You didn't need to do any more. But then you have a later point when one of them ends up damaging their hand and chops it off and attaches a giant buzzsaw to it and says groovy, and then proceeds to kill Popeye with this giant buzzsaw. And her friend comes over and it's like, "Nice chainsaw," and she went, "Chainsaws are for pussies. This is a buzzsaw." The first time it's cute. The second and the third time it feels like a slap in the face, and then when they actually call out the Evil Dead franchise, it's awful. There's a woman that gets attacked and injured, and she's just crawling for the whole rest of the film. Like, she never manages to get onto her feet and try to run. And there's literally a line that someone goes, "Someone ripped off his head and down his neck." Jeez Louise, the dialogue and acting and everything in this is awful. And then they try to hint at the possibility of a sequel. No, you don't deserve a sequel. You are horrendously awful to watch. It is at least slightly more watchable than either Mouse Boat Massacre or Popeye's Revenge, but it's down there. It is pretty horrendous. Like, it would probably be my number 7 if I did a top 10. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. The premise alone was actually kind of decent for this one, where it's like, you have this man-child guy who's basically gone complete psycho, and he believes that he has to kidnap kids and kill them to send them to Neverland to appease his unholy, shadowy side. The concept is decent. The execution is awful. Like, it's really poorly shot, really ugly shot. Really dumb dialogue, really terrible stuff. They have a Tinkerbell in this who is a man who was one of the boys that Peter Pan kidnapped, did not send to Neverland. Instead, he castrated him and then has been drugging him up for years so that he's deranged and crazy. And Captain Hook is another victim who is in the basement that he cut off the hand of and now has a hook for a hand. And it's all about Wendy trying to save her brother. It's so mean-spirited, so vile, so dark, and that almost could have worked. Like, this is one where I'm like, a little bit of tweaks and a little bit of filming, this could have been more passable, but just not great execution. You had Bambi The Reckoning, the film where Bambi drinks toxic river water, which causes him to mutate and become larger. And it's all about him trying to get revenge for his mom and his wife and rescue his child who's been taken by these hunters. It's very blood and honey. Like, it's got the same intro and everything. Slow, ugly, not fun to watch, but it has some decent kills, and the design of Bambi is actually kind of okay. It was interesting having Bambi end up being the, like, likable character and villain in it, because it's just like, yeah, it was alright at points, but it was also awful at points, so it was just kind of meh. Like, it was mostly just let down by bad writing and bad effects. One that was horrendous was Piglet. This is very much a what if we made one of the terrible Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, but we replace Leatherface with a guy in a pig mask. That's it. That's this film. It's just one of the really, really shitty Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels. Full of those terrible hillbilly connections, and even in the description that I read for it is wrong about this one. They're like, he's like got this mutated pig face, and it's like, no, it's a mask. We literally watch him put it on at the start of the film. And it has literally no ties whatsoever to Winnie the Pooh in any way, shape, or form. It's just the killer is called Piglet. Horrendous from start to finish. And this is the other horror film that ends with the main girl just killing the killer, and the film immediately just cuts to credits. And you're like, wait, that's it? She just kills him and the movie's immediately over? It's just, it always like throws you out of the film, and you're just like, wait, this, really? You're gonna end there? No jump scare, no teases for sequels, nothing? It got to a point in this where the main girl stabs Piglet before she does the killing. She's like, this is for my sister. And I went, which character was your sister? I don't remember you having a sister, or you ever saying any of them was your sister. It's just like, and to be fair, I wasn't paying the most amount of attention because it was a freaking terrible Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Maybe not quite as bad as like Leatherface. It's definitely as bad as the last Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is easily my number 6 spot of my top 10 wars, because like this was gonna be on the list, and then it got pushed out. The last of them that I watched of these ones was Heart Willie. I could see someone arguing that this film is actually kind of decent. I almost want to say so, mostly for the ending, but it's like you have to deal with the entire rest of the film to get that half-decent ending. Like, the entire film's premise is that a group of amateur ghost hunting people, and we're going to go check out this abandoned hospital and try and see if we can see any ghosts. The fact that they ran into a weird homeless person in the hospital who could be deranged, and they didn't immediately leave the hospital, tells you how stupid and bad these characters are. And it was just so boring and so dull and so uninteresting for that part. And the main girl brings up, Willie was here at one point. He's the guy that went through and massacred all the people in here. I met him when I was a kid. He murdered my family, but he let me live for some reason. Then Willie is introduced, and the entire film switches genres almost, because it goes from normal slasher film into torture porn, a la Hostel or the Saw films, where he captures 2 of them and he like chops off one of their foot, slowly cutting out the heart of the other one, and it's just like graphically gory and graphically bad. And it's like, if that's the stuff that you're into, this does an okay job on it. The gore in this is actually pretty gruesome and works fairly well. It's not my cup of tea at all, but it's like, if you're into that stuff, there's stuff here for that. The only saving grace of this film is what they chose to do with the ending. So like I said, they set up that the main girl has a history with Willie, and you see her acting weird about him throughout the entire film, and gets to the ending where her friends are being tortured, and she comes in and she goes over to him and she caresses his face, and she's like, I know you recognized me. You spared me, and I've been able to sense you ever since then. I've known we are connected. And she lifts part of her shirt, and she says a tattoo that says, I Heart Willie, and goes over and she's like, show me how to do this. And it becomes this Bonnie and Clyde-esque slasher romance story that actually kind of works. Like, it's so far out of left field, and you're expecting it to be like a ploy that she's doing to get close to him. It's like, no, she's legitimately in love with him, and they become this serial killer murderers together. Like, they bounce off each other really well, and it has this really interesting chemistry, and it's kind of fun and kind of interesting. It doesn't make up for the hour plus of boring, terrible characters that the first chunk of the film is, but I gotta give the film some props for being a little creative and doing an ending that none of these other films would even consider doing. Every other film's like, no, we gotta be as generic as possible with this plot. But this one was actually like, no, we can have some fun with this. We can do something interesting and creative with this ending. And is the only one of these where it's like, if a sequel came out, I would actually probably watch it, even though I didn't like the first one. I think the second one we could do some interesting stuff with them as a couple. There was one other one that I watched, but I will save that for the honorable mentions. There was definitely other horror movie films that just didn't work for me this year. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which almost started to work as a legacy sequel horror film. Like, it had some elements into it that were working. You had these new characters that were, you could stand to listen to them, but you were also happy to watch them die, so it worked out pretty well. And then you get to the twists. And who the killer was a decent enough twist. I didn't fully see that one coming. And if they'd ended with just the reveal of the first killer, the film would have been a passable 3 to 4 out of 5 for me. Then they reveal who the second killer is. And the reveal is so stupid and so bad that it just tanks the film entirely and kills off one of the most beloved characters in the franchise for no reason. It makes no sense why he's killing now. They try to give it an explanation of he's like, well, they forgot about them first time. People can't forget. They can't forget what happened to us. So you murder people? Just start a podcast. Like, go. Literally, there's a girl in the film that you murdered that was running a podcast that would have loved to interview you and get the story of what happened the last time. Then, one of the characters that they murdered and threw overboard lands on a beach and is still alive and survives, and then the main girl and her spend the last few minutes talking about how we're still besties and we're soulmates and girl power, and it's the most forced, shoved in girl power moment I've seen since Endgame, when all of those other superhero women showed up to help Captain Marvel, who needed no help whatsoever. And then they try to set up the possibility of a sequel by having Jennifer Love Hewitt's character meet up with her roommate from the second film, played by Brandy. No, you don't get to pitch a spin-off sequel to this. This was awful. The entire first half of the film is only okay to slightly good, but that ending is so awful that it tanks the entire franchise for me. Like, this is a franchise that should have stopped at 1, because the first film is decent. It's not good, but it's at least likable and watchable and enjoyable. Like, none of the sequels have been. All of them have been worse and worse and worse, and this one is just horrendously stupid and bad. We also had Heart Eyes, which was a Valentine's Day themed horror film, which, when it was being a Valentine's Day themed horror film, was actually pretty decent. The problem is that the majority of it is this sappy romance story about these two people that keep bumping into each other and having these terrible encounters with each other. It's supposed to, like, feel the connection and the love underneath it. It's very reminiscent of, like, Blind Date or Bird on the Wire type of thing. But it's like, you have to get two characters that work off each other well and have good chemistry, and these two did not. And every time it cut to them having their romancy thing, you were just like, ugh, can you just be killed by Heart Eyes already? And then they get to the big reveal of who is Heart Eyes killer, and he takes off the mask, and even the main characters went, who are you? And he's like, I'm blank. I'm the you ran into me earlier in the film. Oh, yeah. Like, it was not a great reveal, because no one would have picked up on that at all. And it was just, like, when it was a slasher, it was an okay slasher. When it was trying to be anything else, it failed miserably. Outside of the horror genre, we did have a couple other little things. We had Hurry Up Tomorrow, which was The Weeknd decided that he was going to star in a film playing himself about the time that he had difficulty singing. It's just one of those films where you could tell that it's a celebrity and a musician that got their ego stroked a bit too much in their life, and they're like, oh, I can do anything. I can make any kind of film I want, and then proceeds to make the most vain vanity project, the most up his own butt film that has existed since Sia did it, making music. Or, Mariah Carey when she had made Glitter. And that was The Weeknd in this film. His performance is truly awful, and some insane odd deliveries. It's just a really shitty version of Misery. But this one, it's like Jenna Ortega kidnaps him and is just making him listen to songs from The Weeknd and trying to pretend that songs like Blinding Light have this deep emotional connection. No, it's a Weeknd song. It's probably about cocaine, because that's what most of his songs are about. Jenna Ortega does a really decent performance in this. I thought she was pretty solid in this one. It's just literally everything else that's terrible. Like, I don't hate it as much as a lot of other people did. This is definitely a film that's interesting to look at and interesting to study, but it's not a good film by any stretch of the imagination. We had In the Lost Lands, most recent Paul W.S. Anderson film that he, of course, had to make starring his wife, Mila Jovovich. He really needs to stop making films starring his wife because this pairing just does not work anymore. It does not, because you tanked Three Musketeers this way. You tanked your Monster Hunter this way. Like, just cast her in a smaller role. She doesn't have to be the co-lead. And this one is one of those ones where it's like every single shot is in green screen and it's super dark and super ugly and it's not fun to watch in any way, shape, or form. Force in this love story between Mila Jovovich's character and Dave Bautista's character, but it is so heavy-handed and doesn't work and doesn't make any sense. And the plot gets super convoluted because Mila Jovovich is playing a witch that has to fulfill the requests of anyone that makes a wish from her. And so she has to make this convoluted plot to make all of these wishes that people have told her in the course of the film come true. And it's horrendous. It's terrible. It makes me so sad that both this director and this star are making garbage schlock like this. Like, you guys used to do interesting films, and now you get garbage like this. Like, just ugh. A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which was a romance film between Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, who basically get to travel to different parts of their lives through these doors and see, get to re-experience different moments of their life. Creative concept, kind of interesting, terrible execution. Very boring, very uninteresting. They didn't do, like, literally all of the time travel stuff is just so dry and so uninteresting. The only things they did interesting is they did one musical number moment, which I was falling asleep in because I didn't even think that part was interesting. The one scene that kind of almost works in the film is there's a scene where Colin Farrell's character leaps into his dad and is there after his first breakup with the girl that he loved was with someone else. And he gave advice to his younger self about, how he's special and about how, this is going to hurt, but this is what you need. He gives this really good speech about that. That's the only saving grace in the entire film. The entire film success depends on whether or not you like and buy these two as a couple, and they have zero chemistry whatsoever. They have almost anti-chemistry because they just bounce off each other so poorly. You don't believe that either of them even really likes each other, let alone is in love with each other. And sometimes that can work. Like, you had Destination Wedding with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, and that one worked as an anti-romance because, like, at the end of the day, they're not in love, but they're the only two people that could put up with each other. Whereas this one, it's like, no, I don't feel that way about either of these characters, and that just kind of tanks any good the film might have had. We had Love Hurts, which I'm really sad that this film wasn't better than it was, because it had potential. There was stuff in there that could have worked. I really liked the actor. Like, he's doing fine in the role. It's just the film is not well made and put together. The problem is he is supposed to be deep in love with Ariana DeBois' character, and she's supposed to be deeply in love with him, and it just doesn't work on any level. First off, there's the dramatic age difference where they're like 30 years apart in age, which is just kind of like off-putting already, but then you never get to see them have or portray any kind of loving feelings for each other. You just hear about it in voiceover dialogue, and it just doesn't work. It is show, don't tell. You can't tell me these two characters are in love if you don't show me they're in love, which you do not. And that's unfortunately the letdown of the film. It's a shame because there was stuff in the film that worked. There was good fight sequences. I liked the Edgar Allan Poe Raven-themed assassin who used giant feathers as his metal feathers as his weapon and fell in love with a random girl. Like, that worked out well, but everything else in the film was just kind of like, oh. Smurfs, a film that its biggest crime is existing because no one wanted it. Not a single human being. I don't even think the biggest Smurf fans were like, oh yeah, we need another Smurfs film. That's what we all need. It's so just passable for the most part. It has a scene that is redeemable where they're chasing Rosamel through these different dimensions, and you see, like, them as puppets, them as a video game, them as the old 2D hand-drawn animation, and stuff like that. That part is the only slightly kind of redeemable part of the film, and it's been done before, and it's been done better, but it's still, like, I gotta give it props for at least doing that. I do have the question, though, of why in the heck is any scene set in the real world when they never interact with an actual human being? Like, they have scenes where it's like they travel to Paris, they're running around real Australia, but they only ever meet animated people and animated stuff, but it's definitely the live-action Paris. So what was the freaking point? Like, if you're gonna do the live action, then they have to actually interact with a human being. It's just like, why? Why did you do this? The entire premise of the movie is just stupid from the start, because it's like, there's this magical book that if the bad guys get their hands on it, will cause the end of the universe. So Papa Smurf hid it in Smurf Village, but then the book just randomly gives this no-name Smurf, because that is his name. He is no name Smurf because he doesn't have his title yet. And he gives that Smurf magic powers for no reason, which immediately tells Rosamel, you know, the book has been found, it exists, we've seen its magic. Like, the first 5 minutes of this film is so horrendously stupid and bad, you're just like, oh jeez. But overall, I would give it mostly a pass. Like, it's not good, it's easily the worst of the 4 Smurf films. But I think I would rather go back and watch this again than the first 2 live-action ones, because... And last, I'm going to throw under the bus Lilo and Stitch. Now, Lilo and the Stitch was not a terrible remake. It was not. It was not truly awful, but it missed so much of what made the first one good, and just lost so much of the heart, and had so many stupid parts and so much illogical stuff. Like, there's nothing here that's good except for the little girl's performance. Like, the effects are iffy, and except for when it comes to Stitch. Like, Stitch's effect CGI is pretty decent, but everything else is really bad. Like, what they did to Pleakley and Jimba and just made them these horrible monstrosity characters. And then they don't even have them in the majority of the film. Like, the majority of them filmed, they're in their normal human disguises. And it's like, really? Like, you're not even going to attempt to do the thing that's from the show where they, you know, stay aliens and dress up and pretend to be humans and look that way. And I've listened to the Nostalgia Critics review and his talk about that, and he's like, I'm glad they chose to do that, because I don't think it would work in this live action setting. I'm like, no, they should have done that, because that would have made the film funnier. Make the film more ridiculous, make it more goofy, and have that be them trying. Like, you could even have comments of people be like, are they alien? Like, they look like aliens, right? You could have had some stuff like that, because there's that, like, they also got looks like that when in the show, and you could have made it work. But it's like, I don't need it to be believable. It's a Lilo and Stitch film. It just needs to be fun, and I don't really feel that this film was fun. And at the end of the day, with this Lilo and Stitch, it's like they just didn't understand the point of the original at all, because the ending of this film just tanks the whole thing for me, where it's like, Nami, despite doing all of these things to be able to stick with her sister and raise her sister and take care of her, immediately abandons her sister, gives her to the neighbor, and flies over to California to become a marine biologist. And it's like, and I get that you're trying to make a thing where it's like, find a balance and do both, but if you're going to do that, do that. Don't have her leave and then show a scene at the end where she's like, oh, I come and visit my sister once in a while when I'm not at school. It's like, no, you have a portal gun that lets her teleport between these areas. Have her live with her sister in Hawaii and use the portal gun to go to school. Or she wants to be a marine biologist. You're in Hawaii. Why not go to the University of Hawaii? You know, a thing that's within travel distance that you could still take care of your sister and go to school with. At least, like, that way you can come home on the weekends and spend time with your sister if you decide to stay at the university. And, you know, it's missing the fundamental thing that makes that film. And it's just insane and drives me nuts that they chose to do that. It's also the one that pisses me off because this is the reason we are getting more. They now think that Snow White failing was a fluke. They had put a pause on doing Tangled, except now Tangled is greenlit again, and they've already announced the cast, so it's like... like, we were this close to them stopping most of these live-action films entirely, but no. Y'all had to go and watch freaking Lilo and Stitch in theaters. You couldn't wait for it to pop up on Disney+. So, like, yeah, again, is this the worst of the animated live-action films? Oh, no, not even close. Like, this is in the dead middle for me. This is, like, it's not as terrible as Snow White and Lion King, but it's not as good as Jungle Book or Dumbo, even, for me. And before we get on to the honorable mentions, I have to throw in my one that probably would have been in my bottom 5 had I counted made-for-TV films as part of the list. And if you've seen some of these other reviews, you've heard me talk about this franchise. It's another of the Haul Out the Holly franchise, except this time they decided to do it for Halloween, and they called it Haul Out the Halloween. I hated this one. I hate this franchise. I hate this franchise with every fiber of my being. So, like, this one, I didn't even fully try to watch it. This one I watched in fast forward, like, because like, I got enough out of it to know it's as horrendous as the other ones. It might even be the worst of the 3. Because this one, the main plot is, oh, we haven't done Halloween celebrations in a long time. Because when Lacey Chabert's character was a kid, her grandmother died around Halloween. So we decided not to have Halloween on this street. Like, she's in her 30s to 40s. You can bring back Halloween to the street. Like, I could see doing that the first year after the grandmother died but to continue to not celebrate Halloween is so stupid. And then the main subplot of the story is that the husband, the terrible HOA person who forces his opinions and his thoughts and his beliefs onto every other character in the entire film, and everyone supports him and tells him he's a great person, is mad that his mom is dating one of the people in the neighborhood. He's like, oh, I don't want to imagine my mom dating anyone. Like, grow the f up. You are an adult. Like, I despise this franchise. I hate this franchise. Like, it is legitimately the worst things. Like, the only thing that could beat it this year is War of the Worlds. And I like Lacey Chabert. She's okay in some movies, but, like, between her terrible performances in these ones, her terrible performance in the Wedding Veil franchise, and Hot Frosty, I'm just like, I'm really sick of Lacey Chabert. And to move on to my honorable mentions, there were a lot of good films this year. There was a lot of stuff that I really liked. Surprisingly, I'm not going to start with the stuff that would be up towards my top 10. I'm actually going to start with the ones that surprised me a lot, which were Naked Gun. Naked Gun was surprisingly good. It was legitimately as good as the original trilogy. And while the Naked Gun trilogy is not anywhere near to my favorite spoof films ever done, I enjoy them. I liked them a lot. I thought, and this felt like a really good continuation, but also giving it its own voice and its own thing. And it's just nice to see a spoof film that is an actual spoof and that is actually well done and creative. This felt a lot like the stuff that came out in the 80s and the 90s when we got real spoof films, and not the trash that we got in the 2000s and 2010s where they're like, let's shove every single movie that's come out into this film, even if it doesn't make sense, with Disaster Movie, The Hungover Games, all of that garbage. This actually felt like a nice ode and tribute to the original type of that one. It's still not like a masterpiece in my opinion by any stretch, but I thought it was fun and entertaining and I had a good time with it. Another one that necessarily probably shouldn't be on my honorable mentions, but I do need to give it a shout out because it was surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be. Childhood turned horror that I watched that I thought was actually kind of decent. That was Screamboat, where they're being attacked by a giant mutant mouse person thing. Like, this was legitimately good. First off, it's professionally shot. Feels like a real film and not like something done by people that have never held a camera in their life. It's got more effort put into this than literally every other one of these childhood turned horror films combined. It all takes place on the Staten Island ferry. There's actual shots of New York and the Staten Island area in this film. You know, the effects are decent, the kills are decent, the makeup effect on the mouse is actually pretty good. The story is interesting enough. It's got some good designs to it. It's got some really great creative kills. It does have flaws. I'm not going to pretend like this is a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. It's very slow. It's at least 10 minutes longer than it needs to be. And most of the human characters are awful. Also, the mouse that's doing all the killing, who they call Willie, changes his size from scene to scene. Like, sometimes he's this big, sometimes he's a little person big, sometimes he's even smaller. It's just like they are super inconsistent with how tall this being is. But compared to all of the other ones, this feels like a legitimate film. This feels like it was made by a professional filmmaker, professional team trying to make an actual good movie, as opposed to the rushed out to make money off of this free IP that just became available. And that is good. It's surprisingly interesting, surprisingly well done, lots of fun, very creative. This is the only one I would even consider choosing to watch again. Really surprisingly good. We surprisingly had a lot of really good sequels and remakes and spin-offs this year. We actually had a Dora the Explorer remake with Dora and the Search for Dorado. Surprisingly good. It not nearly as good as the original. It lost a lot of that meta humor and the stuff that made that one stand out as well as it did. This one played it very straight, very realistic, but it had a lot of the heart to it. It had a lot of the drama to it, and it worked out very well. I was expecting this to be a dumpster fire, so the fact that it was actually good is surprising. Megan 2, which I loved a lot, and a lot of people didn't, but I thought it was a really good sequel. I liked it way more than the first one. Instead of being a horror sequel like it should have been, they decided to instead turn it into a more Terminator 2 style story, where there's another killer android, and Megan has to be brought back to help fight against this killer android. It has none of the gore of the original. It has none of the horror aspects even, really, for that. This is more a straightforward action story, and I'm 100% here for that, because if you're going to knock off any film out there, Terminator 2 is the film you try to knock off. And I thought this one was really fun, really creative. Loved Megan's new design, loved what they did with it. They had some really good character work in this one. I actually cared about the characters in this one, and, you know, was invested. I thought the fights were really good. The only thing I'm kind of sad about the film is that they didn't have the big mecha robot that they used to beat Megan with in the first one at all in this film. Like, I feel like we could have squeezed them in somewhere. Like, have Megan come out with that thing with her. Like, that could have been fun, but yeah. I thought this was a dramatic improvement over the first one, but I didn't particularly like the first one at all. This one I just thought was so much fun and so interesting, and of course it bombed entirely, because, yeah. We had 28 Years Later, the long-belated sequel to the 28 Days Later films, and I thought they did a good job of capturing the idea and the world and the feeling of this series. They did a stellar job in storytelling. 9/10 of this film is like perfection and really well done, and then you have that last 5 minutes of the film where the entire film just kind of falls on its face really badly. It's bad enough that all of the people that come rescue the little boy at the end are dressed as a terrible person who is most likely a pedophile and all these other things. It's like, yeah, but they wouldn't know because the disease happened before that person was found out. And it's like, yes, but the audience knows. Some of them do. I didn't, like, I had that spoiled for me before I saw it, so I knew the ending was a bit iffy. Also, like, even if I didn't know who that was, the fact that the entire last 5 minutes of the film feel like a completely different film than the film that I've been watching, where they're just beating up these infected people with no effort whatsoever and playing kooky music. It's just like, really? Otherwise, it was a great film. It's just they chose really weird. I'm hoping Bone Temple and whatever they choose to do after this will help make that ending a little better, but we'll have to wait and see. Deathstalker remake. I put this one on expecting it to end up in my bottom 5, or at least my dishonorable mentions, and the fact that it was so good that I put it here as high in my honorable mentions, like, this film was a blast. It was like, it's legitimately my favorite of the entire franchise. The best thing you can say about the original Deathstalkers is like, well, it's a half-decent knockoff Conan the Barbarian. It's like, it's got way too much rape in it and a lot of nudity, but that's it. And this has none of that, thankfully. But this one just was so good and so interesting. All of the effects are practical. It started out a little bit iffy, but they just kept getting better and better and better as the film goes. The lead in this one is so much fun and so interesting. This is the first one of the few films that I've felt really captured the 80s aesthetic of filmmaking and has that level of that era. This has a bit of cheesiness to it. It's got that Power Ranger vibe to it. It's a film that knows what it is, knows what it wants to be. It knows it's cheesy, and it wears that cheesiness with pride. This is a handmade film that you can feel how it was made and does not care if it comes off as corny. It just does it. It has a couple flaws. It is a bit too long. It's not always shot great, and again, some of the effects are iffy, and some of the dialogue was not great, especially everything from the little dwarf character voiced by Patton Oswalt. A breath of fresh air when I watched it. It was like I went into this expecting the worst, and I got one of my favorite films from the year. This Deathstalker remake is better than the Red Sonja remake that came out this year. It's better than the Conan the Barbarian remake that came out a couple years ago that had freaking Jason Momoa as freaking Conan, and this is better than that by a lot. Another one that was a surprise that I didn't think was going to be this good but turned out amazing was Silent Night, Deadly Night. This was another that I kind of watched expecting it to be on my worst list, but it's, again, another one where I'm like, this is easily probably my favorite of the whole franchise, and I really liked the first one. But this one started off very sketchy, and I was very worried about this when I started it, because the second they introduced who is the lead in this, because they have Rohan Campbell as the lead, the guy who I only know from being the worst part of Halloween Ends, the thing that tanked that film and made it almost unwatchable for me. So I was really worried, but he actually gives an incredibly good performance in this one. Basically the Halloween Ends plot, but actually done well, because it is him going around murdering people with this voice in his head telling him he needs to do this, that he has to go and kill these people, and you don't know if he's right and there's this magical thing that he can actually see the real crimes these people are committing and he's doing good, or if he is just full on cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy, because he seems both. But then you get to that ending and the reveal, and it's like, oh no, he's seen everything, and that ending left it open for a sequel, and I hope this does super well. I would love a sequel to this, because this turned out so good. The kills are great. It's like, it really felt like watching an old grindhouse film. Extremely fun, extremely creative. There's a scene in the middle where it's like he ends up in this Nazi sympathizer group, and he just clocks the door and goes to town on all of them, and it's so creative and so fun, and just like, yes, this legitimately, I did not have high hopes for this at all, because I didn't even like the last attempt at a Silent Night, Deadly Night remake with Silent Night, and that one didn't do anything for me, but this one I liked a lot. It's legitimately just super fun blast to watch. We had Predator Killer of Killers, which was an animated Predator prequel kind of thing, where you saw 3 different hunts through different time periods that the Predators did, where it's like you had them fighting Vikings, you had them fighting in World War II, and you had them fighting against samurai in Japan, and you see like 3 times that humanity managed to overcome the Predator that was coming after them, and then they're all captured and brought to the Predator planet to fight to the death, and they have to figure out how to escape and work together. It is extremely well done animation. The story is really creative. I love that the first time when we see the Viking that fights the Predator uses 2 shields as her weapons. Like, she doesn't carry any other weapons. She just has 2 razor sharp shields that she uses to bash people in with. Is so creative and so interesting and so well done. Really fun, absolute blast. We had the Del Toro Frankenstein film, which was, of course, amazing, because it's Del Toro making Frankenstein. Like, it's literally his aesthetic, and he got to live up to it, the 100% of it. I absolutely loved the visuals, the way the story was told. It did a really good job of telling the story and making it interesting and making it compelling, and you really felt for the characters. It does change some of the stuff from the book, but nothing so dramatic that I think it hurts the film in any way, shape, or form. I was a smidge disappointed with the film, and that's only because it didn't have enough Del Toro for me. Like, it's full of his visuals, and his style of that thing, but it's only in the visuals. Otherwise, it's just a straight adaptation of Frankenstein. And I kind of wanted him to do with this what he did with like Pinocchio, where he gave it his own voice and had it be like about something else or something more and said it at a different time or something. I wish he kind of did something like that with this, but I think he just respected the source material way too much, and he's like, I'm just going to do the legitimate best version of Frankenstein that I can make. And he made an absolutely amazing version of this character. We also had Dracula: A Love Story, which is a Luc Besson film, which was a surprisingly good film. I went into this not expecting anything from it, and turned out to be really good. It's got an extremely solid cast. It's got a really creative style to it. It's got its own voice to it. It was like kind of between like this and Nosferatu from last year, which of the two was better. And I finally did watch Nosferatu, and I would put Nosferatu a little bit above this one just for its visual style alone. But this one did such a good job of capturing the character, capturing his voice, his motivation. I like that they changed the way he entices people and convinces them to do what he wants, is that he found this very rare flower and he combined it to make chemicals to make a perfume that intoxicates people. Works really well. It really drives home the love story aspect of it and does a really good job of it. We had Wake Up Dead Man, which is the most recent Knives Out film. Really creative, really fun, great cast, great characters, good mystery. Had you going in multiple directions for a while. I had a feeling who was behind it, but how they were behind it was not, I was not even close. So it was very good. It honestly might be my favorite of the three. I think it just balanced everything super well and just had the right pacing and the right storytelling to it. Just worked extremely well. We had Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, which had some really great action set pieces, some really good storytelling to it. I liked how it weaved into every single other one of the franchise and really tried to tie it together. It's like, if this is the last one we get with Tom Cruise as the lead, this is a really good note for him to kind of go out on. It does have some flaws. The death of the main villain is way too cartoony, way too Looney Tunes for its own sake. And it's a little long. It definitely is a bit bloated. It could have been thinned out a little bit more and cut some stuff out. But overall, I liked a lot of it. We had Captain America: Brave New World, which got a lot of hate when it came out, and I don't really know why. But I think the film is actually really good. It's got some really great action set pieces in it. This being the first time that we have Sam Wilson's as the lead, Anthony Mackie doing his first solo film starring. It does really good job and performs extremely well as this guy in a little bit over his head and trying to figure things out. A lot of the complaints is like, it's not as good as like Winter Soldier, it's not as good as Civil War, and it's like, those films are 10 plus years old. Of course not. Like, is it the weakest of the 4 Captain America films? I would say no. If anything, I think it's probably my second favorite. Like, I think this is still better than the first one, and I think this is better than Civil War. Like, I know people that will disagree with me, but that's what I feel about it. I feel like it did a lot of good things with it. It had some flaws. It was weird that so much of it had to do with the Incredible Hulk, but to be fair, Disney just got the ability to use that stuff, so of course they're going to use that stuff now that they have the access to it. And it's nice to actually get some answers for some of that stuff. I thought Harrison Ford did a really good job replacing as Thunderbolt Ross. I thought it had some really good heart to it. It was an extremely fun story. It's like, if you compare it to Avengers, of course it's not standing up to it, but if you compare this to like Ant-Man or any of the other first attempts for this kind of superhero, because that's what this is. It's like, it's not Captain America's 4th film. This is Anthony Mackie's Captain America first film. This is his first leading role in this kind of film, and he does an extremely good job in that role, and I would love to see him in more. I think he did a stellar job. We also had Fantastic Four: First Steps. It's easily the best of the Fantastic Four films, that's without question, but it does have some really good elements to it. I love the effects in it. I love the setting of this 1960 futuristic world. The story is interesting enough. I loved seeing Galactus in all of his glory and having him just be this dangerous giant person in a suit. It was so nice to see. I can't believe anyone thought that that would look dumber than a giant smoke cloud. Like, no, he looks amazing, and it looked so good, and it had some great action set pieces. I do dislike some of the choices that they made, that they chose to skip all of the character development for some of the characters and delete scenes from some of the better elements. This definitely was a film that feels like it was kind of chopped up a little bit too much. Like there's scenes that definitely I've heard about from the cutting room that should have stayed in the film. But overall, I thought it was a really good first attempt for Disney to make these characters, and I would can't wait to see more with these characters. Wicked for Good, which was a really good follow-up, had the really great, still had the great music, great storytelling, great effects, decent action scenes, really well told. It is definitely not as good as the first one, unfortunately, but I think everyone can agree on that to an extent. Like, even the musical, like the first half of the musical is better than the second half. It had some stuff that they chose to do that I didn't particularly like. They added some new songs that were just kind of okay, and then they turned the Wizard's song Wonderful into a trio song with the Wizard and Glinda trying to convince Elphaba to, listen to him and join his side. And that kind of works, but it also kind of ruins that song for me. Like, that is legitimately one of my favorite songs from the musical. And just hearing all the changes and hearing the little differences is just like, oh. But overall, I liked it a lot. I had a lot of really good elements to it. It was a little long, but other than that, it was like extremely good. Avatar, Fire and Ash, which I have a hard time not calling Fire and Ice because it feels like that's what the title should be, even though Ash makes more sense. This one I thought was very solid, really well put together, really good. The CGI is still absolutely amazing. The advances and the stuff that James Cameron has done with these films is still absolutely amazing. The story is a lot better. I like seeing the growth of the villainous character and seeing him change and take in the environments more. I would have liked to seen a lot more of the Ash tribe and that side of that world. I don't think any of us like the fact that the ending is just kind of the same ending as the second film again, but I thought it had some great elements to it. It had some great fight to it. One of my little weird things that I didn't like about it is the fact that Jake Sully and Spider had the same hair, and there were multiple times where they would show like the back of the head or something, and I couldn't tell who was who. Like there were so many times where I'm like, is that Spider or is that Jake Sully? And I shouldn't be doing that with these characters because one of them is a 9-foot tall blue alien. I should be able to pick him out in a crowd easily. Especially not confuse him with the 5-foot tall human being. It's definitely a lot longer than it needs to be, and there's some bloat to it. But I thought it was way better than the Way of Water. I thought this had a much better pace, much better art, and the dealing with grief and dealing with loss and having to try and figure out what they're doing, like it works very well. I know there's a lot of critics that hate this film. But I loved it. If this was the last film in the franchise, I think it's a really good solid point to go out on. I know they're thinking about doing 3 more, and it's like I will still go see them because even if the story is not the best, the visuals are still amazing, and I still like this world and living and seeing this world. So the last ones I'm going to talk about today are not franchises, they're not sequels, but they are good original kind of films. One is a really good documentary called John Candy, I Like Me. Really fun look into John Candy's full life and experiences and how he grew up and who he is and how he was as a person, with so much footage of him, so much great stuff to him. I absolutely loved this documentary from start to finish. I've always been a huge fan of John Candy as a person. I'm not always the biggest fan of some of his movies, but I've always loved John Candy in anything. Like, even if the film is not my cup of tea, like, I love John Candy's performance in it. It's just a really great look into the man and seeing how his life affected all those around him. And this is such a great love letter to him. And last but certainly not least, we will be talking about F1, a film that a lot of people were expecting to flop horribly because it cost a lot to make, more than 100 million, and no one was expecting good things from it. And I was worried because it's I was looking at him just this looks a lot like Ford versus Ferrari. And I thought that film was fine, but it's not a film that I would say I loved. And I didn't particularly love the racing, especially in that one. But this one, man, this one captured the feeling of being in those vehicles and racing and doing that energy and that stuff. It's by the same director that did Top Gun Maverick, and he used a lot of those techniques in this film, and you can tell and you can feel it. The script is a little blonde in some points. There's definitely some parts where you're like, that why would you not already have done this, or how like this should already be designed this way, or it's just like little nitpicks that especially shows like Cinema Sins really point out, where you're just like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense, so that's just kind of dumb. But overall, I think this was an extremely fun, creative racing film, and I would love to see another one like this. Like, they keep hinting at the Days of Thunder remake sequel and have Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise racing together or racing against each other, and yeah, I'll take that. Yep, yes, please. I'm not even a big fan of Days of Thunder, but I'll watch the sequel if it's by this director. Like, easily becoming one of my favorite directors of all time. He really knows how to film action scenes. And that's my honorable mentions for the year. There's definitely some that I wish I could have talked about, but I didn't. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Did you like some of these films? Did you hate some of these positive films? Did you like some of the films I had dishonorable mentions to? Am I wrong about weapons? Because I know most of you will say I am. And that's one that I'm the most willing to be like, yeah, you know what? I will probably watch it again at some point, and my opinion might change. But we'll find out. Until I see you next time, happy watching, happy reading. Bye.